Music's too loud. Gotcha. There
Okay.
we go. The music's gone. It is gone. No sound alerts, everybody.
What's
And I'm
echoing?
echoing?
They said
Okay.
someone's echoing. Is
I
it
got
me?
you.
Am I echoing?
Check one, check two. Cal, am I still echoing?
Kurt,
Oh, I know. How about that? Does that sound better? I think it is. Lots of sound. We've lost Tobias. Tobias will be back very soon.
yeah, we don't know where we're going. We'll be back.
Yeah.
Though.
Thanks so much for bearing with us, y'all. This has been a train wreck and a half. I'm your co-host,
Hold
Kurt
on.
Santana.
Tobias wanted to introduce us.
I'm going to be silent. I will only speak when spoken to.
I'd just like to say that I feel like this would make a great SNL sketch. There's just been so much that I've been gathering. And each time you guys say "and we're back," I think of the SNL sketch back in the day with Jimmy Fallon and Ben Affleck.
And we're back! I'm Dan the Garbage Man. Favorite sketch. Love that sketch.
Oh no, the Ben Affleck.
Like I could never. I've tried to do an impersonation of that. That was actually perfect. I feel like I was. Oh my gosh! It was the 1999, and I'm back to watching that. Oh, holy shit! That was so good.
I have these voice filters on my computer, so I can put my voice into like a transatlantic like accent like filter. And so my chat will get a real kick out of this. I'm Dan the Garbage Man. Welcome. You're listening to the trash.
Oh, I'm crying. That was so good.
Oh God. Hey,
I
listen.
think that was one of the sketches that actually made me laugh till I cried. Like I've never people have talked about it and I'm like, that's not real. And then I was like bowled over, tears streaming down. That and Sweaty Balls. So like those
the Sweaty
like,
Balls sketch is so good.
90s episodes and Colonel Lingus. Those three laughed till I cried and I don't know what can top that.
And since we're talking about Jimmy Fallon, there's a sketch on SNL that he used to do. It was like someone's room, Kyle's room or something like that. Do you remember that? Yeah, it's just like it's a white dude with dreads. He's in his dorm room. Yeah. He's got a webcam.
Yes, and it's kind of like with the webcam. Yeah.
Right, and then Seth Meyers is like, I got my DJ Jonathan Feinstein over here, the ones and twos. But it's like it's got more relevance because like of streamers nowadays.
And I remember, I think in Ben Affleck's episode, he did the Boston skit, Darlene, and they crashed Kyle's room or something.
Nice.
It was good.
Hell yeah.
Tobias for streaming.
Take us away, Tobias. Give us a glorious intro.
Young Jimmy Fallon in Fever Pitch.
True.
It's great. It's a great time. Okay, Tobias, take us away. We're streaming actually live on Twitch right now.
I can't hear you, Tobias.
Yeah, Tobias, you're muted.
All right, I can see it. I'm watching. I'm here. Look. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to Nerd Gaze.
Cue the church organ. Welcome to church. We did it, Joe.
With our
oh man.
With our special guest, Sophie James. Thank God.
My lord.
We have our regulars, Kurt Santana, who is amazing. Thank God for saving this stream.
Thanks, Boo.
And we have Rivka Yecker, the rant extraordinaire, ready to show up, ready to act up.
Ready to act up. Let's go.
My new bio, ready to show up and act up.
I'm in tears. I love this.
And then we have normal guy Tobias Doss, of course. So how are y'all doing?
He's just a regular guy.
Just a regular old guy. You know?
Oh, I thought he said a regular god. I was like, wait, what?
A demigod.
Someone's channeling Ben Affleck
God complex.
Exactly. But just a regular god, not one of those top tier.
I would have to be like Gemini Kanye West with Julia Fox on his arm to actually say that right now.
Yeah, it always has to be a meme, like a cultural moment that you
back.
identify with.
Yes.
Rivka, please.
Thanks, Tobias, for introducing us. That was great. And thank you to everyone who has stuck it out despite our long ass tech haunting. That was fully a ghost in the system fucking with us. And no other reason. There's no other reason. We don't have another reason. So that being said, we're really excited to have Sophie James on with us. Sophie, I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what it means to be a political sociologist. Is that how? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hi, everybody. I can't see the chat or engage with you all. So hopefully between the three of you can let me know what's going on or if there's any questions from the viewers, listeners. I don't know how tech works. So like they said, my name is Sophie James. I'm a political sociologist. And really what that means is that I'm constantly depressed. So it's basically analyzing and seeing the common threads of just how culture affects politics, how politics affects our micro social interactions, and how we're all kind of tied to macro level structures that, i.e. oppression. And the worst thing we can think is that we have integrity in this space. Like, that's the biggest lie, that you can have integrity living in this oppressive, violent society. So that's the nature of being a political sociologist. I don't know if that makes sense. Very vague, but technically I'm constantly depressed. But I exclude, but really good. What was that?
What makes you a really good media consumer too.
Yes, it's and like we were talking before, we finally figured what was going on. It's rare that I consume media. I don't take it at face value, and even if I may be excited about something, it's rare that I actually it sticks with me or I take it with me as if. Besides Watchmen and Lovecraft Country, like I was saying, I think those two are pieces of media that I've consumed that I'm just like, oh, like they have their fingers on a pulse and just created also a beautiful story. And, I already talked about it all, but like dissecting things like The Matrix or The Witcher or things that we're going to talk about today, it's like, yeah, I can see the cultural significance, but then when you divvy up and you see from the stakeholders' point of view, and then going through operating in the capitalist machine of Hollywood. And then when you break it down to kind of racialized notions of who's visible and equity as far as like weighty scenes, right? Because we had a very white Matrix, but we had a very diverse Matrix Reloaded, but then they were just kind of seat fillers. And to wait 20 years and give us Matrix Resurrections, and we have another, I don't know, I feel like it's a wasted talent, but I can't wait to hear what you guys think. But yeah, it's like I can appreciate how the Matrix is the cultural significance of that, but as I'm watching it, I'm just dissecting so many things a mile a minute, and it's just kind of like, oh, okay, well, those 2.5 hours I can't get back. So.
No, you're spot on, and you said something interesting earlier when I told you to hold that point. But I'd love for you to repeat that. You used an analogy of how in Sex and the City is the fifth girlfriend or the fifth character, and in the Matrix.
Yes, and I think it goes back to when we're trying to be smart consumers of what we, you know, of just what we consume and like not taking everything at face value. Because I'm watching Matrix Resurrections, and I only got to minute 37, so I haven't seen the you know, the last 2 hours, and I most likely will finish it today. But just like in Sex and the City, like the, you know, the city is the fifth girlfriend. I was listening to the dialogue of all the characters, and I just felt like, wait, this just sounds like a compilation of the past 18 years of critics, of fan theories, of I guess now when we look at who the creators were in the 90s and early aughts, and then who they are, whether it's their having transitioned and just other things that have probably informed their lens, they're trying to reconcile and do too much with this targeted dialogue. And I was just kind of like curious if you guys picked up on that too, because it was just coming on, they were laying it on thick, and it's almost as if I couldn't really accept this newer reboot just for even entertainment's sake. But it just it felt flat, because I felt like they're trying to reconcile too much of things that they probably couldn't reconcile because of all the intersecting themes of what culture was in the 90s and late 90s and early odds that we really like. How can you reconcile that in the 21st century? So it was very discordant.
Yeah.
Cacophonic even, like, stop it. And I was like, only 37 minutes in. I was like, I need to go to bed.
And I'll tell you that I personally think it continues to feel that way. Not to say that it's a bad movie. It's a interesting take. It's basically how I saw it. It was like a joke within a joke within a joke. Yeah.
I saw that too.
Yeah.
I saw it too.
It's like this just total, like, it's like, we're going to break the fourth wall. We're going to talk directly to you. We're going to brain fuck you. Because the whole point of the first Matrix was a total brain fuck. Like, I remember watching it for the first time, as a kid, and then, in that moment being like, what? And then, like, again as an adult, and I was like, I literally took a week to just dissociate or like spiral, because I was like, oh my God, we are living in like all this, like this total like because it's at that point it's not like it's okay. You know how in Inception's like a dream within a dream, and you're like, oh, all this like, interesting psychological like exploration, whatever. This is more of like, no, our capitalistic system, and not just capitalism, our global, like the way like global like politics exists today, makes life in so many ways like a living hell. And so like, even though we might be in the Matrix, I made a joke about this, but like the Matrix itself and unplugging from the Matrix are both living hells. Like, but unplugging from it just means you're woke. Like, right. You're awakened. It's a metaphor for being awakened to the system we're part of, but there's no escaping it. You're still part of it. And that's so like, when it's a brain fuck, it's not like, oh, I'm psychologically enlightened. I'm like, I've already known this shit. Now I'm just like desperately depressed.
Something that I think is interesting is, and I think it goes to Sophie's point about taking something out of its like cultural context, where you have a movie like The Matrix Resurrections that's it's very didactic without trying to be, it's like, so here's the problems with like everything that's going on today. But the thing is, like, everyone has been like desensitized to an extent where it's like the conversation around this stuff is about making ironic jokes. Like, that's all we can talk about nowadays. It's like we can't really have an existential crisis anymore when like that's pretty much all of life now. We don't know the certainty of like how long this world's gonna go on, like what our health is, because like we are reliant on like literal government programs, like little like things that like can give us, make us healthy. So it's like you have this sort of social commentary that the Matrix Resurrections is giving us, but it's like we get this shit on TikTok. We get this shit on social media, you know? And so now you're trying to talk about your piece of media and how it didn't work. Like, that's not beholden to you or like to the viewers. That's beholden to the machine that's giving you the license to make another movie. So it's very tongue in cheek to say like, oh, we were going to make another Matrix without you. But like
who said that, Kurt? Who said that?
That was Agent Smith who said that. Agent Smith says it in the film Matrix
right,
Resurrections.
But in real life, like Warner Brothers was about to make, like they would have done it with or without the Wachowskis, basically. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's the Wachowskis sort of being like, so to anybody who hasn't seen, who doesn't know what's going on, basically, like the Wachowski sisters, right? They put out a bunch of Matrix movies in the 90s and early thousands. And then basically Warner Brothers owns the intellectual property of the Matrix. And now they wanted to put out this new movie. And essentially they were like, we're going to put it out with or without you because we're living in an age of adaptation, sequels, like, you know, franchises. And so like, this is what makes them big bucks, right? And so like one of the Wachowski sisters did not want to do it. So only one did. And that's why I think they literally say in the movie that Warner Brothers made the video or the video game called The Matrix. Like it's all a brain, like it's like
wasn't that Christina Ricci's character when they're having that board that meeting, right?
Yeah.
Which great cameo. Stackcast.
So too many. It really was. It really was too many cameos. I was like, oh my gosh, they're here. They're here.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean,
I think that's why you can't divorce the external. What am I trying to say? Like words are escaping me now that we're live. Pressure. I'm kidding. That's why you can't divorce the external sociopolitics outside of just the vision or the lens of just this story on paper, just this screenplay. Because I think trying to make all that work, I think that's why it ends up falling so flat on the film. Like I probably will finish and I won't have anything bad to say about it per se. But then again, I think the takeaway will be just like the takeaway was in Revolutions, right? That's a third film. Mm-hmm. Once you, after you're awakened and then you really realize you can't untether or divorce yourself from the system, it really, and that kind of crushing weight of, I guess I will say depression for lack of a better word, because it's pretty dark, then it just turns into negotiations of how you're going to exist until you're nothing, right? And that's why I always, when I'm talking to my friends, I'm like, I think it's the worst thing to think that we can have integrity. Like when we're making the kind of negotiations we are, because we're also making it within this oppressive system or within this this crushing weight of and bargaining with these systems as well. And Neo, he doesn't really like make his negotiation ends up being about love. So then it's like, okay, this is like a very convoluted, very like, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it then it falls even flatter to say, oh, well, it's because my love for this person can transcend time. Yeah, that sounds all great. And it's like, oh my gosh, no book, but for sci-fi. But it's like when we really like synthesize it to the negotiations that we make to exist within this, because we can't untether ourselves from much unless we're dead. Then it's individualized, and for Neo it was about love, and it's like, okay, next. Sorry.
Right, because also what happens, my take of it was like, okay, so if you don't have the love of your life, you're basically fucked. Like what else do you have? Because it's not like there's like in the movies, it's not like there's, okay, like work sucks, right? Like anything work related sucks. The family, there's not really much emphasis on family, or like there's not like it's everything that there's basically like everything in life sucks except for love. And it's like, okay, but also our understanding of love within our current society is so convoluted and fucked that like I don't actually think that's the answer. But I am curious, Sophie, how you would define integrity, because I'm curious about like what it means to there's really no way to have integrity in a society that is oppressive.
So I think integrity of how it's defined from top down, of it being a very cishet, patriarchal, racist society, and even though they pass off Christianity as like the moral backbone, and that's these acts are ways in which we get integrity or we can perform integrity, but things like rugged individualism, like working hard, honor, justice, these kind of buzzwords that always tie with or the rule of law, or like if we adhere to these as much, then that gives me a sense that I have integrity operating in this space. And we all know that's bullshit if you're not a cishet white racist or a male in this white supremacist society. So I think there are ways that community notions of collectivism or liberation theory kind of tries to give us certain modes in which that maybe it could be integrity adjacent, but I don't think that wholly one can have like pure integrity of how it's like passed down to us from the top down of what it really means. But
and Tobias, what did that feel like? I know you were catching up on Tobias was telling us that yesterday he was catching up on all the matrices, because it sounds like that's what a lot of us had to do, because the new one coming out, you basically can't understand it unless you've seen the others, or like at least understand in depth the concept of the others, which the Resurrections is continuously confusing even if you do know a lot about it, in my opinion. But yeah, Tobias, I'm curious, like when you were watching or rewatching these movies, I know you had a moment with Animatrix, right? Where you were like, this feels bleak.
Yeah. I mean, it was because of Animatrix has three short stories front loaded that actually have to deal with like the canon of the Matrix. There is the last flight of the Osiris, which is touched on lightly in Reloaded, actually. About pretty much like 1,000 sentinels attacking one ship, but that one ship letting people know what is coming, like what is actually happening. But the more important one was the Second Renaissance, part 1 and 2, which detailed like how the machine uprising happened and how humans dealt with that in ignorant ways, that makes you actually feel for the machines for a good part, until you maybe get to part 2 and it just turns into machines literally like destroying whatever is left of the human race, and then subjugating them, just like the machines were being subjugated for most of their existence, and being destroyed violently. But yeah, that was a very bleak part of that whole pretty much of those shorts, and those shorts are really amazing. I really do think you should give the Animatrix a try if you do like the Matrix itself. um some I think they do on Nihilist, like on, I mean, just like there is no there's no real idea of hope there. It's just the idea of survival, and like um picking, like red pill or blue pill, of like how do you want to deal with like what you're being presented. um
Yeah.
can you also, I'm so
Mhm.
sorry, I just wanted to ask for you to add on because that was so brilliant and I have so many thoughts, but you mentioned when you brought it up too that there was this scene of was it sexual violence against the femme
It
cyborg?
so it's so it it's it has that feeling because you see it's presented at first as this normal woman getting um grabbed up and getting attacked by three men, and she already has one, I mean, breast out, so it's, has a feeling of being very sexually charged as well. And then one of the guys hits her with a hammer in the face, and her pretty much her I mean what was her, I mean, face ends up being a machine face then.
Mm.
And she is like crying out that I'm real, and
Mm.
I mean am a real, I mean, person, don't do this. And
Mm.
then she gets shot
Mm.
to, I mean, death, which which was very alarming. um you know uh I don't think they I don't know if the makers of that short exactly knew what they were doing, or like knew like how that would feel, especially since like the Matrix is a like it's very much talked about of being a very queer and trans story.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
then, knowing of the violence that happens to trans women themselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Yeah.
just it's hard to not put those together, especially once she says I'm real.
Fuck.
Right.
Like,
And I would also think that it's like that debate of just philosophically of what is the true nature of being sentient, right? Is it
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
those who just because they have human flesh and they created these fucking constructed these words and this language and these mores, or is it this person that's actually telling you I'm real? And
Mm.
so there's that conflict there because as you were saying, when you brought that up earlier, I was thinking of Ex Machina, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
it connected me to Matrix Resurrections, where the game company was called Deus Machina, and in Ex
Mm-hmm.
Machina, it's Deus Ex Machina, and that's a branch of that, and so I'm just like, this is 3 degrees of separation of just a lot of shit. So a lot of stuff that we can dissect that we don't have time to dissect now, but
Yeah.
that's what I was getting from your point, and your really salient point
Yeah.
too.
And someone said it reminds them of Blade Runner, which is like, yes, this is a consistent trope within a lot of science fiction. This idea of, is AI real? Is
Mm-hmm.
AI capable of being human? And this comes up a lot. I mean, this is one of my favorite science fiction tropes, because in reality, who are the people who program the AI? It's humans. And with the like it's you can look at real life right now. I mean, we're living with AI every day, like
Mm-hmm.
it's slowly becoming nonfiction. Like it's already become nonfiction in so, like, if you're very wealthy and you have like AI in your like every part of your life, and people have like robots, like
Mm.
it's not that crazy anymore. And yeah, I think about that a lot because if we're talking about Blade Runner, yeah, like which is one of my favorites.
I have not seen it. I have to
Okay.
apologize.
No, it's
It's
okay.
on
It's
my
okay.
it's on my
Mm.
queue, but we can talk about it. You
No,
don't.
no,
I
it's
didn't.
okay.
I
It's
didn't
okay.
say that for you to not talk about it.
We can go back to Ex Machina then, because I'm okay with that too, because I love Ex
No, no, no,
Machina.
no, no, no. I want to hear your thoughts on Blade Runner because I do plan on watching it, but and it's been spoiled for me so many different ways. But I'll take your
I mean,
take.
Okay.
I
I
think
don't want
Blade
to
Runner
spoil
is
it.
still like there's not much to spoil that you haven't already seen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But and that's why
I
I'm
think,
like, don't.
and plus like, to be honest, like the plot of Blade Runner is very generic.
It's been replicated many times. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's not it was original at the time, but it the way it's been adapted, you've seen it. Like Ex Machina actually has a lot of similarities in terms of someone a blood flesh a man with flesh and blood having
Mm-hmm.
feelings for complicated feelings for someone that's still feels like they're real, but is created. And so it's this common idea is like, just, is someone a being just because they were born out of uh, a bloody womb versus being created in a lab. And so that's a common, common thread. And in Blade Runner, there's romance between like someone who hunts AI, like at the time, like replicants, they're called replicants. So like there's like the person who hunts them because they're trying to get rid of the replicants. But he falls in love with the replicant, and it's this, and he didn't know, like, because the whole time he doesn't know if she's human or not. And so that's kind of this interesting idea of like what makes a human, a program, a program. I just wrote about this for Eternals because it's about the movie Eternals, which I loved. I'll have to send it to you. And a lot of, I love that movie, and I think it explores that a lot of.
I think this is a really good opportunity for a transition to something we were talking about in the sort of pre-interview that we were doing with Sophie. So Shane says, yeah, the OG Blade Runner really had something to say that no one else had said yet outside of sci-fi novels. Tobias and Rivka had both said that, okay, so this story's been rehashed a lot. And so sci-fi... Go ahead.
Shane also said something about the movie Her, which I know y'all like.
Yeah, we can talk about it if we can. But so sci-fi has always been that thing that is like confronting us with the sort of fears of what could be possible in our futures. But like Rivka said, there are so many things that are actually happening. How can sci-fi transition or create something that's still fresh and new? And I think this is a good transition to talk about Marvel and what they're trying to do with newer projects, and trying to touch into some of the human problems that we face, not as superheroes, but just like as, marginalized people. I think, Sophie, you mentioned Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Hey, baby, how you doing?
You saw that? She's just like, quick moon, and I'm out.
Yeah, but I remember you had this really good point about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where they were trying to talk about police violence, and how Black people are seen in culture. Like, what does it mean for like a huge franchise to do this cultural pivot? Now you want to talk about big problems. How can you do that in a substantial way that makes your audiences think?
Yeah, and to pivot from Iron Man 1, which was steeped in terrorist assemblages and nationalism and just grossness and like just toxic masculinity in all its forms. Even though his redemption was the arc, I get it, whatever. But you're still not divorced from these war machines, right? In Captain America Civil War, Civil War, you see Captain America literally turning his back on any kind of accountability on just how to operate peacefully within respecting other nations' sovereignty. And then him rejecting that is saying, no, I am, above all of that. And it's just kind of like, okay, that's still a trope within political science that is centering the West and fostering the military industrial complex. And then you give us, and then it's a series, right? We don't even get a feature film, but that, I digress. Then you put in a series, and then you have these targeted scenes that's meant to be this dialogue on such larger issues, and it becomes so reductive. And yes, you have this Black superhero that fought and protected all y'all, got snapped away, came back, and still was ready to fight, and helped eliminate Thanos. And he's getting filmed for the TikToks as he's being profiled and put in handcuffs by the police. While he just came out of a house of the first Black super soldier that was really just a Tuskegee experiment, and then we're just like we're mentioning it, but we're also ignoring like the weight and the significance of what that means. But then at the end you have, or at the end of the series, you have this person who went through something that's not in and of itself it's traumatic, but the way that Black people hold the trauma of like in the hypervigilance of any moment I could be stopped by the police and that could result in my death. And
Right.
it was and then it had to be Bucky to say, hey, actually, I'm an Avenger and he's with me, for him to even acknowledge his existence. And then at the end, he still takes the mantle of being Captain America. I just, what, what do we do with that?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's either you just stay superficial, you stay and you do what needs to be done. You give these actors their careers, you set them up for you set up their generational wealth, you keep us who are being oppressed at bay so we can get lost in these, you know, larger than life stories, and just stop trying to be sociologists at this point. Like, you cannot handle this. Okay, because to tell that story accurately, it would need to have been like 15 episodes just dissecting the fact that he was profiled and put in handcuffs alone. Right. And Bucky didn't really leverage his physical safety or anything. He just, with the calmness of white dudes that you know that they have, he just, you know, it's just a tap on the shoulder and just like, hey, my guy, it's a misunderstanding, you know, we're an Avenger. As if the fact that he's an Avenger or Avenger adjacent is when he can legitimize his existence and like, oh, my bad, can I get a fucking selfie? We are fighting, sir. So it's a lot. And it's like, how, like, I get it, even just the visibility of having a Black Captain America and this cultural pivot that we had to wait until phase 4 because we had to make sure our market base, and we're $1 billion industry before we could feel like, okay, I guess we can throw money at more culturally diverse and queer visibility tropes, right? I guess we can because their financial base is set. So it's like, structurally, if that's how you're set up, how can we even trust that cultural pivot, right? Just stick to doing what you're doing,
right?
And
it's giving very
don't even go there.
Target giving us like gay pride like t-shirts, you know. Like, thanks for the effort.
It is. What's the
representation
famous
matters.
TikTok or the viral TikTok? Hi, gay. It's giving that. It's giving that, but I forget what the comedian's name is, but it's giving that very dry June 1st PR, solidarity PR that we get from managers. But I don't know if all that made sense. I probably sounded much better in our pre-interview.
This is great. Like, you're spot on. And I actually haven't watched the show because I have a lot of Marvel Disney stuff. I'm like not super into. But I know Tobias was gonna say something.
Yeah, because me and Tobias watched the show together.
Yeah. Tobias said,
right.
That I have an issue with it. So I'm curious what you were gonna say.
Oh yeah, I mean my issues were pretty much the same as Sophie's. I mean, I don't think that I think that once you present what the previous Isaiah, I can't remember what his full name was, but once you present Isaiah as the previous Captain America,
right? Yep.
And what he went through, like, I think for the first part it was okay enough, but they were still dismissing so much. But it was once the Falcon just dismisses it himself as like, he's just he's just an old man that like is bitter, and I just was like, I can't stay here. Like, I can't keep I can't endorse this, because like he's not even like taking in what Isaiah's trying to say. And the Falcon is treated so much as a um moral, like, I mean, North Star in that show,
Oh, you
that
mean token? Sorry.
yeah. I mean, yeah,
Sorry.
like, I mean,
I didn't mean to interject.
just man, that him coming to that endpoint of, oh, he's just bitter. I mean, just as like, okay, then we just see like black pain as, I mean, just, oh, you're still, why are you still, like, I mean, you're still upset about that? Like, damn, go get help. Like, all right, well, us, I mean, new blacks are gonna, just join the fucking just join them the fucking party, and I mean, say like, hey, like, y'all got to get over it, like. And I had really big issues with that, and them trying to clean it up so quickly in that series. I think you're absolutely right, of that is like a 15 episode show, because how most of the examples were just rushed. They were like, it like made me think like, damn, children really are watching this. And sure, maybe that's why you bring such a simple approach to something like the examples of racism that get shown on that show. But it was like, you guys are going out of your way to make this so simplified in a way that just looks childish, and it looks almost like, if I didn't know that this was a Marvel show, I would say this is a skit. Like,
Period.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, you had to do the background context yourself, and how many people are doing that, right? How many people are researching the Tuskegee experiments? How many people are experimenting eugenics? How many people are experiencing how we treat our vets, right? Because regardless, he was a super soldier, like, he's still in that he would still be considered a vet, and then now he lived in the hood with his performative thug nephew that's like, as if to be like this prop of like, that's how we understand black folks. It was just such a mess. And then you have this token over here, like, that's putting this message that progress is white comfort. No, sir. We need you to back up. Because when that guy, I forget which scene it was, when they're facing, who was that psycho Dick Cheney Hitler guy? John Walker,
yeah.
John Walker. So when they're fighting him, and then, one of the bystanders is like, really, how are you going to be how are you going to put on this costume and wear that shield, and you're black, and you see how they treat black people or whatever. And I forget the line that he says, but that's where I kind of blacked out, where it's just kind of like, now you're going to put this kind of black on black discourse, and as if to eliminate, like, this guy's concerns isn't rooted in a lot of trauma and strife, and then for his quit back to him, as if to be this, how we resolve, like, the layers and layers of tensions. It was giving like Kendall Jenner giving a Pepsi to the police officer, and it just and I'm just like, just finish this the way that y'all want to, with guns and fighting, and just be done with it, because I am over it. Like, you cannot have this cultural pivot if you're not going to fundamentally restructure your foundation, in which they're not.
So there's this interesting.
Sorry, I feel like I'm monopolizing this.
Thank you for speaking. You're so great and brilliant.
This is why we brought you on.
Yeah, you're amazing.
Like, I'm to speak.
Hello, guys.
So
everybody in the chat's laughing their ass
like
off at the Pepsi commercial.
That's what it was giving, guys. Yeah. I only speak the facts.
That and Hillary Duff solving homophobia in that one ad in the 2000s.
Oh my God. Well, that's it. So interesting thing. So someone brought up sitcoms, right? So like 90s, early thousands sitcoms. Okay. This is a good cultural pivot conversation, because if you look at the media and you look at how race has been portrayed forever, right? There has always been a token marginalized person in media. It's not like it was, completely devoid. It's just the way people were being used. So like, if you look at the 90s, there's actually like quite a lot of like predominantly like Black comedians or Black actors who were like on sitcoms, and they're like the one Black, character. Or you had like certain shows like for certain demographics. It was still a marketing ploy. Like it wasn't a genuine integration of people. It was like to create, like there were entire networks dedicated for like, Black entertainment, or you had like Latina, how are we saying it now? What's the
so are we doing Latinx?
Yeah.
We upgraded from Latinx. Oh gosh,
I don't know. There's all the controversy. Everyone's inter-community conversation, so I don't know. But Latinx, like, media. We had media for. There was. This is obvious. There were different media conglomerates that were serving different populations, right?
Yes.
And so like there was like, it's like if you look at sitcoms in the 90s and early thousands, yeah, you're like, it's not like it's devoid of diversity. There's actually probably sometimes, if you look at the first Matrix, even not sitcom, but like it was incredibly, like the second one, Reload, like incredibly diverse, like the outs, like incredibly, like they were all like the fucking orgy scene. There was like no white people. It was like predominantly Black and brown people, which is also interesting to say because those people are the ones that are revolutionaries and radicals on the outskirts, right? But
who got the monologues and the camera time?
The monologues, right? Exactly. And so, but the interesting thing with the sitcoms is that you look at this sort of, like, they weren't trying to be political at all. There was no political agenda with including with sitcoms, right? And then you kind of move into this weird direction. We're moving. And then people are like, oh, fuck, we got to start, being somewhat inclusive. I don't know at what point this started, probably like, I don't know, maybe like 2010, like maybe, I don't know, potentially that's when it started. Like, I don't know when exactly, like people were like, oh, like scrambling to be like, wait, we actually need to stop making shit so white or so tokenized.
Right.
It's not a word, but point is now, like, we're in this era where the people who control, or like who are creating media, I see people who control media. I'm like, people say Jews control media all the time, and I'm like a person in media, and I'm Jewish, so I'm like can't perpetuate that trope. But
and you're going viral on TikTok.
I'm going viral on TikTok right now. I'm
exactly.
like 4 million controlling the media, but it's actually not true. Also, I have my own things to say about that, but there are a lot of white people who are controlling the media. I'm gonna stop saying that, who are creating a lot of and producing a lot of media right now, right? Point is like, a lot of commercials today, like back to back, there's a lot of like Black families, or like for all these different brands and commercials, like it's like back to back. And that is creating this really complicated narrative that we've solved racism, or that we've created this like diverse world. Because look, this happy Black family is now driving a fucking BMW through their beautiful Wisconsin Door County cottage, like creating this like scenario, this narrative, right? And it's interesting because like the diversity itself is like pretty lackluster. It's like it's still incredibly, it's tokenizing, it's forced, and it's like not, it just doesn't feel, it feels like they're trying to sell something while trying to be progressive at the same time. And there's nothing natural about it. And that creates this dilemma, if we look at the Marvel, people who are trying to create political narratives while still having this marketing brain. They're like, going back to intellectual property, they're still thinking from this white supremacist, how can we sell? And the way to sell right now is to be somewhat progressive, because the people who are consuming that media are like, it's like a fine line. We all watch them walk this fine line. You know, we're watching them walk. They're like, well, we got to include some kind of police brutality thing. We got to do some kind of, and it's like we're seeing them bumble around because they themselves don't have a good political praxis. They themselves are like whitewashed, liberal, assimilated Americans. Like that's what's happening. And then when going back to Watchmen, the show, if you actually let Black writers write or brown writers write, or you know, whoever, Jewish writers write a Jewish character for a Jewish actress, where I have my own opinions about that, but like, you know, if you actually let them write, and like you said, even if it's a white showrunner, let them have, let the creators have like the fucking dignity, the like creative control over their own story, then you can create interesting media. But if you're gonna prioritize, like we will never have authentic media if it's if commodification and capitalism and intellectual property is a priority above everything else. Like we will never have authentic anything. It just that's this moment of true disillusionment when it comes to media, because it's genuinely sad.
Right.
Wait,
oh, Jesus. No, I mean, besides, you know, realizing that I was holding my breath through that whole thing because it was just so gripping. The only thing I would add to the disillusionment is the how it gets thrown into the cultural zeitgeist, and how media like magazines or other things start to then talk about, oh, this breakout show and the brilliance of Lovecraft, the brilliance of Watchmen. And now they're pivoting and asking these questions that they wouldn't have asked before because you did not think that diverse stories could be and nuanced stories, right? Like they literally devoted, between both of those pieces of art, between Lovecraft and Watchmen, they devoted one full episode just dissecting the Tulsa Massacre. I mean, technically in Watchmen, it was a thread throughout, but in the journey in Lovecraft, it takes the characters to just, so that's just 60 minutes where the viewer has to sit and wrestle with just this. It's not that they talked about it, threw it away like in Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then it was used as a plot driving tool to, you know, get them to the other ends of their journey. It's like, no, you're going to sit in this. You're going to see the pain. You're going to see the terrorism. You're going to see the destruction. You're going to see the nuanced trauma, how it manifests, those who bottle it up, those who, you know, talk about it. And you're going to sit there for 1 hour. And then next week, we're going to talk about something else. And so you're having these, just the kind of reaction from the audience, and also, the media conglomerates who are now having to, now you have to talk about these central plot points with these characters with this show that you're now deeming as buzzworthy and popular, and seeing them fumble through even synthesizing that information. And one of the things that always comes up in those, between both of those, one of the things that came up between both of those shows is that these conversations of, oh, we just didn't think that market was viable. Human beings, like, wait, what? Like, you didn't think Black people watch TV? Like, what? You didn't think that Black stories would sell? What? Like, so so that was just what I was thinking at the tail end of your point, Rivka. Nothing, you know.
Yeah.
It was a jumbled mess, but it was just, you touched on a lot of good stuff.
The thing that makes me weary about this, I'm already weary, but it's like when people become reliant on popular media, on that consumption, to learn about the things, like the atrocities of the world. You know, there are literally forces at the highest power that are trying to silence the simplest thing, the 1619 Project, trying to get rid of any sort of critical race theory that's gonna teach like children what they need to know. Like, they don't need to watch a Watchmen show to know about the Tulsa Massacre. We're gonna give you like real history, and it's like, I don't want to be beholden to like the showrunners that we're talking about to like have to educate these people. about what's really fucking going on, you know? Like, we shouldn't need the
Right.
sitcoms to do these episodes. We shouldn't need like these movies to do it, when it should be like in our schools, and there should be historians like fact checking it at all points, because you know, there, as much as people want to give us a real good depiction of something that happened before, it's always going to be revisionist to include some sort of character, to make it part of some sort of storyline, you know? And I
Right.
mean, like, when we talk about like how, you know, black showrunners and black writers can do a way better job at talking about this, we found a lot of missteps even in Lovecraft Country.
Yeah.
We're just like the way that black trauma was used as like a setting was just like, it was very like appalling to a certain point, you know? It was just like, wow, like we are literally like in an episode, in the background is Emmett Till's funeral. Like,
Yeah.
what what are we like
Yeah.
it was very very touchy, and there were some points where I was just like, I don't know what this show is trying to do, because like you've got a writer who is like famously racist, you know, H.P. Lovecraft, and then you want to make a movie that's almost about critical race theory within that world. It was very tricky, but they did the best they could.
And I think, yeah, and I think we have our own sort of feelings of Lovecraft Country, but the biggest one was like in Watchmen. I felt like okay, you sat through an episode where Tulsa Massacre is happening, and it's intense, it's brutal, it's like it feels very historical, though it feels very American, and in like the most worst so ways, and it's doesn't feel exploitative. Is that how you say it? Exploitative, whatever.
Exploitative. No, you said it right.
Yeah. And so it doesn't feel exploitative, because there's also this like, I mean, I just think the show was well done enough where there was constantly like, if there was vengeance, there was dignity, there was power for the Black characters. And I think that in Lovecraft Country, and not to like make it about these two things right now, but I do think that there were moments where I felt like the Black characters did not have integrity and they were exploited, especially Ruby. I had a lot of feelings about her. I had like a lot of, I had a lot of feelings about her, but like not to get too wound up into that, because I want to keep up with this interesting idea of intellectual property. And like Brandon said, the Marvel military complex machine will always make the money machine go burr. So
yes
that's the truth.
That's like, it. You literally had a guy create do a war crime, was filmed. Did you what he got a slap on the wrist because of his decorated past? I'm sorry, I'm still on Falcon and Winter Soldier, because I could write a whole PhD, a doctoral dissertation on the mess of that. So yeah, and that echoed so many terrorist what am I trying to say? Just like these kind of seminal war crimes that most likely have been glazed over and diluted. But when we talk about just throughout history, just how we've held on to our supremacy, it's through that. And then you have this man in this show. Who cares if that was a bad guy, right? And you have him murder him in the middle of a square at like 1:23 p.m. filmed. So and all he is just a pat on the hands, like
U.S.
what
through and through.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then now we're gonna have to sit through his plot, his character arc to be sort of like this racist anti-hero complex of like, well, some bad things like genocide are justified sometimes. If we wrap it up in a 6-foot, objectively attractive white man, I can't.
Isn't that the cycle though? That we, okay, so now this is a great way, 6-foot attractive white man, if we go into The Witcher, and
yes, great transition.
Yeah,
flawless.
This is making me think about the elves in The Witcher. So if you all watch The Witcher, the folks watching, if not, I don't know, is it a real world? Is it are they it's the okay, so it was originally a book, and in the 90s it was written by a Polish guy. So he's taking a lot of Slavic mythology and bringing it into a fantasy world, right? There are witchers. Yeah. So that's why there's like, for me, I notice a lot of like Holocaust stuff happening, like parallels, because he's coming from Eastern Europe, and so like that's his context. Also, like there's so much other like just Eastern Europeans. There's been so much just violence happening between them for forever. Yeah. So like he's coming from that perspective though, so that's kind of how I'm interpreting it, but you can apply it to like pretty much any society, any culture, any society. There's always going to be marginalized people, there's always going to be oppressors, there's always going to be violence, and there's always going to be people who are radical revolutionaries, and then those people are going to be seen as vigilantes, whatever. Point is that so it's originally a book written by this Polish guy, and it was then turned into video games, and then which Kurt and Tobias play, which I think Kurt and
Who
I
adapted the video games? Was that like an American gaming company, like, or I don't know how it works, but who adapted the video games?
No, that was CD Projekt Red, which is also a Polish gaming company. So,
perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Just didn't want anything to get like lost in adaptation.
Yeah.
No,
so
a lot doesn't actually. Like it stays very close to the source, while having to, because it's a video game, having to
add other elements.
There's a little bit more of, because it's a video game and video games don't usually let you lose. There's a little bit more with Geralt winning sometimes, but still like it's not. Okay. It's not very it's not crazy about that. Geralt actually fails in some very big ways in the second game that make it go like, oh shit. Well, there's
like him minimizing Yennefer's infertility struggles. I'm kidding. I'm gonna turn this into like a soap opera. Thanks for that context, Tobias. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's then turned into a video game, and then and which I think Kurt, I think Kurt and I are gonna stream him playing it next week, or I think that's what's gonna happen, because I'm awesome. Just like kind of craving Witcher stuff right now. Geralt is extremely hot, and honestly, a lot of people in the show are. But also, so basically, right? So it's this fantasy idea. Witchers are boys who are created, and they are then turned into people who fight monsters. There are monsters because I'm not going to explain the whole premise, but essentially there are monsters who live in this land for a reason. Their whole idea of it is like there's different parallel universes, which they call what do they call them? Like y'all remember what they call them?
Which ones are we called?
Like the different parallel universes where monsters come through, like in order.
The monolith.
Like, there's the monolith.
That's separate.
Like the monsters come through the monolith because they're in different alternate like universes.
Oh, I don't know what those are called.
I forgot what it's called.
I have to rewatch season 1.
Yeah, I forgot what it's called.
It's probably a realm. It's a realm.
A realm of something, yes. A realm, yeah. It's in another realm, right? And so the Witchers fight monsters. There are also mages who basically protect kingdoms. Those are witches. And so there's like a witch academia, essentially, kind of like Harry Potter vibes. And then you have, the elves, which is kind of what I'm getting at. The elves are the original sorcerers, and they're the original protectors of the earth. Very similar to indigenous people across the whole planet. And the elves are also the ones who then trusted humans, and humans then killed massacred the elves in a huge genocide, and then took magic from them basically, and so there's this like really intense tension between elves, humans, honestly elves against everyone, but mostly elves against humans. And so what I wanted to bring up was going back to this idea of what is actually revenge or vengeance or reclamation, and how that gets lost in the mix. Because as of right now, and I know that Kern Tobias haven't finished season 2. I know Sophie, me and you binge that shit, but like
one sitting.
I know it's the same. But there is a moment in season 2, which I'll try not to spoil too much, but the elves are basically trying to reclaim land and reclaim their people. And it's easily getting lost in translation because of the ways politics works, where they twist it on their own, they twist shit, right? And now they're saying that the elves are not trustworthy. They're going to steal something. They're going to kill everybody. They're turning them into violent, and they do become violent. They do, but it's an act of revenge, right? And so, what does that look like when someone, and you can look at, in our real life, uprisings that have happened 2020, right? What was that an act of? And you can ask 10 people and maybe you'll get a different answer from everybody.
Right.
And that's sort of the problem, is that when people are revolutionaries, you can even ask 10 revolutionaries what their purpose is, and they might all have a different answer. And that's kind of like the conflict here, because that I'm thinking about a lot, because like you said, this white man was justified for, committing a war crime. And that was all right. But anytime marginalized people revolt, or anytime people revolt in the name of marginalized people, they're considered murderers, violent, fucking, I don't know what the hell they call them anymore. But like, yeah. And it's just interesting to see in a fantasy land at like the elves are sort of this, that's how they're depicted, which is interesting because they're also the original sorcerers of the land.
I have
So
a question.
Yeah.
Do they face any sort of like is there like contention between like a figurehead for the elves? Is there someone who's like going to power and they're just like, no, you're not like talking about what we really want or need?
Yeah.
Is that what they're going through? Okay, I didn't make it that far in the show, but I imagine that that's something that they're like facing as a difficulty, because there's so many layers here of metaphor. There's labor, there's race. It's amazing what you can do with fantasy, and thank God there's people of color in the show. There's not that many, but at least we're going there, right?
Oh, well, I got some things to say about that, because we were talking about tokenism to Falcon and Winter Soldier, but also the symbolism of Fragilla, where she got lost in the sauce. She was very much on this, approximating whiteness or mimicking the tools of the oppressor will get them to legitimize me, and then and the crux of my point will be a spoiler, so I'm not going to go there, but it's interesting to see all those tensions at work. It makes for great stuff, but what I will add is not only our elves paralleling just indigenous folks who tilled this land well before we even knew of its existence. Also, in the process of how they get mages, right? That's parallels to human trafficking and components of sex, labor, reproductive trafficking, all these things. And what they're really showing is that we're legitimizing you because we have this need, we have this gap, right? Because we just disseminated the original sources of power and now we don't know how to till this land that we've amassed through genocide. And now you guys are going to be responsible for helping us do that and also helping us amass more land and wealth and power. And I think to your earlier question, because you asked so many questions, I think I lost like 30% of those questions, Rivka. But I think your central question of what revenge looks like, I think it's depending on who's telling the story. Because a lot of reasons why I think the Elven plot points get lost, but also you see this very targeted turn of putting them in situations where they're looking genocidal, where they're looking like they're responsible for these war crimes, and it's like, wait a minute, that's a reaction. Like, what are we talking about? You can't. You did this, and in that one seminal act that really. Please catch up on season 2, guys, because there's so much. I know. But that one, and you know what I'm talking about, and then you find out at the end that the most jaw-dropping final scene ever.
Yeah, I know.
And then it's said that, oh no, I did that. So it's just kind of like, wait a minute, and we could see parallels to how the FBI infiltrated revolution movements of the 60s, but then from them infiltrating it, from them putting in spies or flooding the streets with crack, and then what they end up doing is giving them cause to then create more carceral solutions and create what am I trying to say? To create mass incarceration because of the reaction of their targeted of that act. Like, no, you did this, but then now but now the hysteria and the outcry is towards how they react. So I think what revenge I think revenge is really going to be in who's framing the story, who's framing the narratives, who has the power. And the way that they cut the elves at the knees by those targeted acts that they did to where the season ended the way that it did, that was a little triggering for me, and it was a little traumatizing, because they're still relying on diplomacy and good faith to create these alliances so they can exact their rightful ownership, or back to flip things back to how it was. And when you're in allegiance with a wholly dark, violent, inept, kind of callous partner, like, you can't really trust them. So it's going to be interesting to where they take, because then they were trying to make it seem like Homegirl's hysteria was like tied to her to her being a mom, and it just got really gross, and it's a lot. I don't know if that made sense, but it was a lot.
It made sense, and to put some more into context,
because I'm trying not to give spoilers, guys. I know. I really want.
I know what you're saying.
I love spoilers. Like, I feel like for me, it's like the thing that makes me want to do this show.
You don't want spoilers
for this. Watches the thing and like Googles everything about it. Not for this. Okay.
You do?
No. I do that shit.
Don't do it for.
I'm gonna say
Don't do it for this.
I won't.
I might already know it.
We consume media differently.
Tobias, you said you already know it?
I might already know it.
Well,
only because,
he plays the game.
Because I played the games, and I've read wikis and everything else. So like there's a lot of information that I had to like help Rivka through, of like, hey, this is what these are. This is what these mean. I can't really tell you like without like maybe accidentally getting into something else that might show up later. Like.
Right.
But what I'm interested, yes, Fragilla. So Fragilla is a black mage who has to go basically be a mage for kind of a shitty kingdom, and does what she can to gain respect. Like, she really didn't have much of a choice. Like, you know, she was kind of put in that position where she had to assimilate into this supremacy culture, and like give in, because like, yeah, going back to the human trafficking comment, yeah, so mages are created because they are girls who are sold to the uh fucking, what's it called,
What are
the
they even
academy,
called? I always
the
forget. Yeah,
academy.
right. We'll just call them the academy because I forget what they're called too.
Yeah, they, the academy, and so like, so that's how they're children, they're little girls, and they're sold by their families, and then similar to the witchers are also given as a sacrifice, in order to be turned into the witchers, and the witchers, like, I'm pretty sure it's like 3 out of 10 of them die through the process. So like, you're basically giving your child, in hopes that they could be the next witcher or a mage. So that in itself is like this, you know, this, kind of going back to what you said, like, why do we need these people to exist? Because of the society that they've created. Like, someone fucked up somewhere, unleashed a bunch of monsters, and now a bunch of little boys have to become witchers and to kill them. Why did, you know, why do these mages have to basically exist? To prevent scandals from happening, to protect rapist kings.
Okay.
That's why they exist for the most part. Like, that's their roles, is to protect kingdoms. So like, there's so much, these kings can do it, they're basically political strategists, they're PR people with superpowers, like with magic powers. Like, that's what the mages are in this show. That's why Yennefer, who is, one of the main characters in the show, gets so, she's like, I'm sick of this shit. I'm like, I'm just bored. Like, I'm bored, like protecting this king from what? And that's kind of the fascinating thing, is like, next season, what I'm interested in, and I'm putting my faith and trust that though they did this to the elves, it's actually an analysis of the complicated, like, I think they want us to think about, I want to believe that they want us to think about what it's like for, because they do so much of like, the elves are the original sorcerers, the elves are like these, you know, they have all this power, and because of like, whatever the elven woman did, was an act of revenge, and it was very clear it was an act of revenge, and her, counterpart had said, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. I want to believe that the show, will take us in a direction where we are putting faith in the elves again, because I don't want to demonize them. I don't think they should be demonized. Tobias is laughing, so we're gonna hate the elves. Okay, all right, great. God damn it.
Don't do that. I don't want to hate the elves.
Look,
I want to hate the elves.
I'm just saying, like, I mean, in a certain way, like, Witcher has moments of being very hopeful, but also Witcher, like, is very nihilist in, I mean, the, I mean, way of like, hey, like, people are bad.
People are
Like,
trash. Yes, that is a
yeah,
fact.
Monsters
are bad.
are not.
And that, like, all I can say is elves are people too. You know? And
that's
it
dark.
like it they at least there is a tinge of sympathy and like tragic, like there is a tragic element to the elves no matter what, and it does try to keep that as a reminder, as I mean to that, like there are reasons why like people go to such ends after being burnt, like after being, you know, so I mean damaged by others, and
Yeah.
that is what I will say, like that, like Witcher it never goes to the point of where elves are the bad guys.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to note that this sort of unnatural display of violence and darkness. I think they're pushed to this brink for really no logical reasoning. Or there is logic, but in the context of those who want power or who want and those are parallels to nation and state building that we've had just with our society, and not just society, just globally, right? Like you're having these massive levels of destruction, folks being displaced, folks being murdered, all these different things for really no reason.
No.
And so I think that probably exacerbates the levels to which that they snap, and where it's like, I don't give a fuck. Yeah, I'm taking all your babies. Sorry. Spoiler. But no. Fuck.
You didn't say anything.
I would like to strike from the record. Okay. So I think that I would hope that they would at least highlight that, just so it doesn't just seem like, oh, these elves are irrational actors. It's like, no, this is a reaction to something, and why can't we sit in that space of what that reaction is to, you know what I mean? And really undercutting the logic of these fucking kings who are, you know, enabling people to do the dirty work for them because they're all punk ass fucking micropene little bitches.
Hey.
Literally. one literally had incest with his sister, and then like had like there's I mean the king with his sister. And
there was a lot of information jam packed, but you said a name, so I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, season 1 for sure. For sure.
The king. Yeah, no, it was completely crazy. But the thing is like I can't. You know, it's interesting going back to this idea of like whose vengeance is justified, because The Witcher, his vengeance is justified whenever the fuck he wants it to be. Like, you know, we're like, whatever you do, Witcher, I trust you. Like, I'm like, Geralt, you can do whatever you want. I have full faith that you are making the right decision. And why? Because he's a brooding hot man, and that is gonna happen in every like you put like, I love the Punisher, right? I love Daredevil. Like I love Batman. What is my problem? Like, you know, like it's the consistent anti-hero, because I'm like, yeah, your moral code is complicated. Like you make some adjustments in your moral code. You have like all of this, but in reality, he's also acting out of emotion. I don't like with Yennefer, he's acting fully irrational as hell. Like, this man is like driven by his penis and his heart, and that's what's going on. But it's so interesting that despite all of this chaos, and you can look back at the Matrix and, you know, all of this chaos happening, what is the one thing that provides stability and purpose? Now for The Witcher, it's a child. For The Witcher, it's not love. It's a child. It's having a reason to live. It's having a reason to move on. And it's this like family values thing. So it's interesting because The Matrix is like, you got to find the love of your life. The Witcher's like, the love of my life is a little crazy, so I'm actually going to put all my faith into this child instead. And so it's like really interesting, because love is not necessarily like romantic love. It's not necessarily the purpose. The purpose is preserving the world that they're on for the sake of this child, and like protecting this child, which then I know you, Sophie, you had mentioned at one point, being like, yeah, but there's some like patronizing like parenting happening too, where he's like overprotective. He's like, don't do anything. It's like,
well, yeah, because in that kingdom, and there's a lot, and it's really laid on thick in season 2, where you start to see that the magical currency is children. Whether it's exercised through Yennefer's infertility and the lengths that she'll go through, and even just kind of being detached from herself and kind of getting into this tunnel vision of like any means necessary, and kind of getting away. And then obviously she comes back to who she is, but it's exercised through her infertility. It's exercised through, because initially you see through the development of the relationship that Geralt's character is softening and he's learning things, and he's, he can spit out more than just grunts. He's giving us full sentences with subject verb agreement. Like this child is changing him. But initially when he did the child surprise, it was even for him a negotiation for survival too. So I think just as a standalone children, or the idea of, and then don't even get me started on Queen Mother Elf, that what she went through in season 2. But like children in of themselves is this currency, and it's just so interesting to see the negotiations around that, and only through the relation, only through just their bonding, I think Geralt is changing. But he didn't give a damn about that child originally. No. I'm sorry, that's my hot take.
You're right. You're right.
I want to do a quick time check. It is 12:30. Sophie, I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about the Unpaid Emotional Labor podcast, and if we need to wrap up soon. Yeah, we got time. All right, cool. Everybody in the chat, if you could put ! Sophie, you'll get a link to Sophie's Instagram, which will have a link to the Unpaid Emotional Labor podcast. But do you want to take a second to talk about what you do on that show?
Oh, okay. It's kind of like a bait and switch. It started off after I lost my mind watching The Bachelor, and there was a pivotal scene 2 seasons ago. Well, it was a Bachelorette, and there was this. I'm sorry.
It wasn't Matt.
No, not. I lost my goddamn mind in Matt's season, but he was giving, because Matt was a token. Like, I didn't really lose my mind the way that I did with the way violence was portrayed and also legitimized in the season where I lost my mind. But with Matt's season, it wasn't anything that I hadn't seen before. So I think to a lot of people, they were shocked. But to me, I was like, oh, y'all, I could have told you since they announced him before we even met him that he was an overcorrection into racism, and we were going to get someone just stepping and fetching for these folks. So I was not surprised for Matt's season. The season I'm talking about is the season right after his, The Bachelorette. So one of the ladies on his season, she became a fan favorite off of this sex positive feminist vibe, which it really wasn't. And she was like a toxic faux liberal Karen. Yes. So Katie's season. And then she gets this one guy who was like an immediate favorite of hers. He's the kind of guy that was told he looks like Ryan Gosling once and just ran with it. You know what I mean? But he was told that when he was a kid, and that stuck with him. And so he's just coasting through the season, and then it gets to Hometowns. So Hometowns is 4 episodes from the finale, and he's one of 4. And he is demanding this woman tell him, am I going to be the final one? Because that's the only way that will, why I'll continue to perform that I love you. And it turned very quickly into this one continuous shot, 55 minutes of dialogue of this man berating her, abusing her, using gaslighting tactics. It was the most scary thing I've ever seen. Like, that was just kind of like, I'm sitting here like, wait a minute, they're letting this happen? Like, they really hate this contestant. They really hate this lead to let this happen. And at the end of that episode, they do, because he self-eliminates, they do a montage of their love story. They had never done that. This show is 19 years old. They had never done a montage. And they'd never done a montage of someone who self-eliminates is no longer part of the show. Not one of 4. So I put my master's degree at work, and I woke up the next day still emotionally dysregulated, and I transcribed that entire episode, and I went live, and essentially I snapped, and then I dissected why everything this person said is connected to if you're dating someone like this, run. And and from then on, I built my base ill. Like, I literally had like 100 followers, and now I have a following, I guess. And so on my show, that's what I do. I dissect things that are taken for granted and just the most mundane things like The Bachelor, or really nuanced and really polemic topics like, you know, queers leveraging their marginalized identity just to approximate wealth and success, and just what that looks like. Or on my show, I had a guest talked about the unpaid emotional labor of sobriety. And we've talked about spirituality. We've talked about democratizing education with our spheres of influence, what that looks like. If you know, as you're growing and your worldview is shifting, and how do you kind of keep those same bonds with people who just basically are ingesting the red pill, right? Like, what does that look like, and the nuances of that. And unpaid emotional labor came out of a term paper in grad school where I looked at trafficking survivors, of how negotiating survival and services, but also are met with racism, also are met with homophobia, also are met with these other things that the anti-trafficking sector chooses to discard. And it just kind of evolved into where, well, there's unpaid emotional labor in everything. So that's what I do on my podcast. I dissect pop culture. I mean, I really go hard in The Bachelor. Like, I really, really go hard in The Bachelor. Like, I won't stop until I get a cease and desist from that hellscape. That's my goal. But I dissect all things. My last episode, the season finale, was with my new friend Lee, and we talked about queer identities and the heteronormative gaze in romantic comedies and of TV and film. So
amazing.
Yeah,
That
it was
is right
brilliant.
up
It
my
was brilliant. And I had COVID, and so Lee kind of took. I was just the whole time just like, A, I'm not worthy, and B, this COVID brain just can't, like, I can't compete. But it was
actually my friend.
I know, which was so it was so funny when they mentioned your name, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know of Rivka because they know my friend Colin from Bourbon and Browntown.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
Because
I remember. Yeah, Chicago. I followed them on Instagram too.
Yeah.
Chicago. So they were on my podcast. They were episode 16, and we were talking about democratizing our spheres of influence, and that was another brilliant conversation. So it's highbrow, and then it pivots to being really unhinged and lowbrow.
Yeah.
I love it.
Which is my personality in a nutshell.
Gemini.
Hey, but yeah, that's that. I don't. It's sometimes I think I'm still figuring out how to concisely, like, frame what I do, but then as a Gemini, I'm like, but I want to do all the things. So that's a verbose snippet of sorts. Sorry, chat. Sorry, those in the chat. I talk a lot.
They're interested. They're very interested in the show.
Oh, well, yay. For now, so the last season, there was they have their third Black female lead of The Bachelorette, and they had historically, and mind you, this show is like 19 years old. It was historic that they had the first ever top four. So in the top four, it's always formulaic and customary that one of them becomes the next Bachelor, or the first runner-up becomes a Bachelor. It's always been that way. So now these whites were so scared to have another person of color lead, because they're all biracial, that they plucked this embalmed mozzarella from 8th place to be the current Bachelor.
So it's the guy? It's the guy who
it's Mr. Clayton, and mind you, he has he is a thumb personified. He has no personality. He is somebody from another realm who puts on a host body and is performing what they think a white Midwestern male ex-football who wants I just want a wife and I just want a family. And you know, they had the nerve in his marketing to call him the underdog. How is a white man from Wisconsin with generational wealth and with no school loan debt and had a career in what and was in the and had a career in sports?
Is it?
He's hideous to me. He's hideous to me.
Maybe
he looks like urban.
He's got IBS.
Not IBS. Not IBS. He looks like Herman Munster to me.
The other time.
He looks like Herman Munster to me, and he only says the same three things. You know, I'm just a Midwestern guy looking for love and looking for a wife. And you know, the wife is going to be blonde, barefoot, pregnant in the kitchen, and she has no identity because she was probably raised in a household that said your only identity is going to be from your father's house to the sorority house to your husband's house. And then she's going to have a breakdown in postpartum depression in 3 years. So it's like,
Sophie,
you were so mad that there was 4 people of color you had to choose from, that you plucked this man from obscurity in 8th place. And his audition for The Bachelor were because the lead was a teacher, so it was every other week is like, we don't know how to write for Black women, so we know she loves basketball and we know she's a teacher. So every other date was basketball or kids. Basketball, kids. I kid you fucking not. Like, if you were to, I wouldn't say watch it. It's trash. Why am I going off this tangent, guys? Like, I cannot believe I'm suggesting guys this trash.
This is what we're here for. Like, this is literally how we talk. I'm just happy you're here because I talk like you, and I feel like half the time these two are so much chiller than me, and I'm like, and I'm like, wow, okay, so good to have this energy because I'm like, I'm always the one that's like, listen, the fucking
it's so unhinged and frenetic, but I'm so happy that at least you're following. But
here's the thing, Sophie. I don't watch The Bachelor, but I was thrown into it because when I was dating someone long distance, I was living in Philly for a month and a half this past year, and all their friends wanted to watch The Bachelor every fucking Monday night. And we're all queer. Like, we're all a bunch of queer trans people. Like, it wasn't like we were all like straight people who were like, yeah, let's watch The Bachelor, you know, girls' night or whatever. It was like no one, like, I don't think anyone there identified as a cis woman. So like, everyone was like non-binary, you know. And so whatever, we're watching The Bachelor every Monday night, a bunch of queerdos, you know. And I'm like, what? And I'm sitting there like, you know, I'm doing what you're doing. I'm like, wait, this is wrong with this. This is fucked up with this. And they're like, Rivka, it's just a fucking show. And I'm like, no, it's not. This is political analysis. This is a cultural, like this is reflective of our current American society, and it's fucked.
Thank you. Okay, I see the bottom squares, and I am not liking these facial reactions and that heckle, Tobias, because you're not even like, I would say for you to watch me. No, I wouldn't say, or maybe watch one of my past lives where the amount, like you said at the top, Kurt, like the amount of content you can get just from fantasy and sci-fi that parallels like just kind of real sociopolitical things that we engage with, like you'd be surprised at what you can parse out through the Bachelor franchise. It is actually wildly insane.
But how many people are looking at it through that lens? You know, because it's
no one, and that's why I'm hated so
very
much.
Very little.
They're like, you're ruining the show.
That's why it's for me. Okay, you know, here's the thing with reality TV that I like to talk about is, if you put me, I don't watch reality TV because if you put me in front of a TV show, so when I lived with roommates, they would all watch, you know, 90 Day Fiance, all this stuff. And if you put me in front of it, like if you sat me down and said, Rika, stay there, I watched all of Love is Blind in one sitting. I could watch it. I'm fascinated with how stupid people are. I'm fascinated with it. But I don't watch it because it makes me genuinely sad. Like, I could watch fantasy stuff because I'm like, okay, at least this is like I'm like, okay, fine. There's like some stuff that I'm getting out of this. But like with the reality stuff, I'm like, this is like, I'm sad. Also, it's like I get sad in a genuine way where I'm like, wow, whiteness and patriarchy and cis heteronormativity, or even this, okay, like fine with Matt and his girl. It was like a biracial, like it was still obsession with whiteness. I'm sorry, but it was still like in that direction.
Yes.
Like, white heteronormative patriarchy. And I'm just like, this is genuinely like difficult for me. Like at the end of this watch of the Matt season, on the last night, I was like one of my last weeks in Philly. And I told my partner at the time, I was like, hey, I don't want to watch this anymore. And they were like, well, you got to let everybody else know. And I freaked out because I was like, guys, I don't want to spend my last fucking week here watching this show. I can't do it anymore. And I freaked out. And they like they were like,
and that was the most heartbreaking show too, because you saw in real time, and I call him a coon. So, I mean, to the chat, that is a only black term. Okay, I don't want to hear y'all quoting me, but I called him a coon because you see this coon short circuiting in real time of, wow, I did all I could do to approximate whiteness, and they spit me the fuck out, and I was literally the butt of all their jokes and used as a driving tool of humiliation. And I'm like, yeah, Sway, like, what did you think was going to happen? You think these people have your back? And then you're dating a whole white girl who attended antebellum parties and whose parents are MAGA. And then, yeah, you broke up with her because you didn't want Black Twitter to roast you, but then now y'all are together. Get the miss me with that. So, and that was the finale, Kurt.
Damn. That was the finale. And there was an amazing Michelle was an amazing person. Michelle was my favorite.
Phenomenal.
Michelle was this like amazing. She was a teacher. She was like Matt's height. Like in all the ways Michelle could have been great, she was great. And
but even Michelle knew you only date white women. I'm a bow out. I've been to this party before, because that is something that you have to deal with. Now I'm queer, but when I was in heteronormative relationships, that was something that I always had to, unpaid emotional labor of sorts. I had to negotiate if I want to let, especially if I'm dating a black person, a black guy at the time, like if I want to date or even tell them that I'm attracted to them, not even dating, like I'm already after already, I'm thinking, are they into black women? So that's a whole other conversation of black men and sexuality and intimacy and relationships, and just how it's just been manipulated from going back to slavery, and the effects of it now, and like to where just for dating, I'm just like, is he into black girls? I don't know.
Wow. Yeah.
So
and that goes,
I mean,
me and my cousin talk about this so much.
Yeah.
Tobias, well, preach on it, Tobias.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm like, it's. I talked to my cousin about this also, that she's a black woman, and I am a black man that is currently engaged to a white woman, and
congrats.
Thank you. I mean, thank you for the
yeah,
thank you for that.
I mean, that's a big deal. It's awesome.
Yeah. But we have talked about before about like why is it with black men that like once they reach a certain status or they feel a certain way about black women, that black women get just thrown out, right? And like, why is there such inherent hatred of black women coming from black men, that that like just makes sense in the way of like men are horrible, but like doesn't make sense in the like historical aspects of how like black women have cared about black men almost exclusively. And also on how, yeah, and plus also just on how like if anyone else is going to have the back of black men, it's and I mean it is going to be black women, it is going to be, you know, other black queer people, you know, this and how black men are so indebted to white patriarchy, just trying to make like get out of where they are in the world, and they will uh just douse everything else on fire to get even a little bit higher up, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But I mean that's a black on black conversation that I don't that I don't love to parse out around other people all the time. Yeah. And
Totally get that. And
yeah,
even for me, I feel like I'm a step removed because I was born in Haiti
yeah,
and trafficked to America. And even in my own little bubble of trauma, I was still kind of in this very I was around other first gen Haitians as well. So this concept that you're talking about too is still exclusively African American. Like, and I think when you're looking at how that is parsed in just Pan Africanism and in diaspora, like interracial, the nuances of interracial relationships and the misogynoir and the just blatant just disregard of black women by black men. It looks different in Africa. It looks different in the West Indies. It looks different in Haiti, you know, and then I have to think about, but what's common throughout all of that is black women, we get it from both sides. We get, and hence one of the reasons with intersectionality kind of being coined is like we get the harm from men from all sides, and then we also get the anti-blackness as well from other genders. And so
Yeah.
I think it's not, even though it is a very sensitive, it's a very and even culturally too, because the way it looks like in Haiti, it's there's certain things that I can only sit and listen with as far as African American experience that I can't connect with. But I mean, trauma is trauma. But I do understand that part of like where it's something that's very, very sensitive. And yeah, you're not just gonna dole it out, you know, just to have this conversation just because it's, you know, not everyone can access that conversation, and not everyone can accurately hold space for that conversation. But then so then it makes it that much more cringe and uh dark when you see the spillover of the first black male lead in Matt's situation, and the entire season they're fixating on his white mother who was left to raise two uh mixed babies, as I like to call them, from the deadbeat black dad. And then the first time they make the lead have a conversation with his father in years, it's to exploit the fact that this deadbeat dad trope. Because if there's any, because the only thing that the white audience can connect with is black trauma and this deadbeat dad trope and all this stuff. So I think Matt's spiral then of like of him trying to straddle between two identities, but also he's going to always pick the one where there's more security in. So there's more security in whiteness. You could start to see him kind of like short circuit of how even production and how he thought he was going to have like a heart to heart, you know, why did you leave? Like I needed you. And then it turned into this big exploitative thing, and it was really disgusting. And then you find out in real time your girl is MAGA adjacent, and then now you got and then you picked out a ring, and you're literally dismissing every single black woman on there who was really in love with you, except for Michelle, because she knew. She's like, I've been in this relationship before, I'm gonna self-eliminate. And then you do all this stuff to get to the end, and then who's the one that's humiliated the most is you. It's dark, guys. Absolutely. We talk about that and a lot more depressing stuff on my show. I'm kidding.
I mean, clearly, I think our shows have parallels because we talk about all of this stuff.
1,000%.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, y'all, that was really great points on
Right.
both your
If everyone
ends.
wants to drink some water, someone did redeem a hydrate. We did talk a lot, so if you need a hydrate, go ahead and do that.
Okay, I'm gonna step away. But
I'm gonna
let me
grab
know
some.
how
I
you
need to
guys
grab a
are.
water too.
The Microsoft
Let me
Surface
know how
right
you
now.
are with time because you guys, it's a Saturday. I don't want to monopolize your day, but I'm a guest on your show.
I think we'll probably wrap up in like 10 minutes or so. Like probably start. I think we did start, but
I feel like our conversation's just 30 open tabs.
we could go forever and ever, honestly. Like you're so great. I'm so glad we met.
Yeah, you absolutely need to come
You
back on the show.
know,
Yeah.
you just have to tell me when and
Amazing.
where.
Yeah.
Well,
And also like you're in Chicago,
virtually.
so like
oh, we are definitely gonna hang.
Yeah,
I need
we're gonna
some movie nights. I need some movie nights.
Movie nights. Yes. Exactly what I want.
If anybody in chat is interesting about making this conversation offline, we're also in Discord. Sophie's in the Discord as well, so we can continue some of the conversations that we're having. You just put !Discord. You get a link and you can join in on that. But yes, Sophie recurring guest is definitely going to be happening.
Yeah.
Wait, somebody put that in the chat?
Yeah.
Oh my God, stop it.
Oh my God. I love it.
Should we wrap up, you think?
Yeah, we could start wrapping up. I'm just like processing. We had so many, it's so funny. Stuff. It's like, well, it's amazing, but it's also like it really does feel like it's a bunch of air signs because we had these like topics and we went over all of them without feeling stressed or like there needed to be structure in any way. And we just like we all like there's this like beautiful thing about air sign language is that like we just understand each other and it's just like it's like the most beautiful synchronized like I'm like I could live off this shit seriously. It's like
no 1,000%. And to feel like I've only actually I think spoken with y'all in like a week ago. I didn't know. I know for sure I didn't know Kurt and Tobias a week ago, but you and I, Rivka, have been actually I want to know, am I putting the wrong emphasis on the eyes of Rivka or Rivka?
It's Rivka. Yeah, like think of like an old Eastern European person being like Rivka, like that.
Yeah, that's how I read it as. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So
because you're from Haiti, so you're Haitian. So you
yes. And Haitian like what's going on?
People who speak multiple languages will usually put the emphasis on the, but like in English, American, like anglicized, it's like people say Rivka, but that's okay, whatever.
Okay, perfect. Anyway, yeah. But I know like we would chat in the DMs a little bit. I'm like, okay, I see we're gonna have a shorthand pretty soon, but then to not know you two, and then that's the beauty of air signs. We're like, okay, we can talk for however long we've been talking about, and there is this shorthand and like seamlessness of conversation and ideas and thoughts. And I will be thinking about a lot of the points that each of you made that were too big to dissect in this space, like probably all day, because y'all are some scholars for real. No, and I'm not just saying that. There are people that were given, yeah.
So the way that we usually wrap things up around here is we all go around and talk about a particular piece of media that we're excited about either watching or that's going to come out. So we'll do that. I can go first. I think I'm really excited about watching reality TV with this completely new perspective, of just like, oh, I can be scholarly about this, because like I grew up thinking like, oh, Jersey Shore's trash, or like The Bachelor's trash, like all of this different stuff. But I've got friends who watch it, so yeah, it's trash. But what can we learn about society? I've never thought like, oh, I can learn something by watching this, maybe even watching The Survivor. I was never a Survivor person. Maybe I can start watching that show.
Oh my gosh, you'd have you could get a PhD in Survivor. Like there's a lot there.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess reality TV is something I'm finally excited about. Who wants to go next?
Tookie.
I'm
Come
still
on, man.
thinking.
You I mean never wanted to watch Double Shot of Love? And I mean with
I did watch a lot of the VH1 like reality
Me
love
too.
shows. I was very much into
and
Rock of Love, Flame River of Love.
Yeah.
hmm
Oh my
New
gosh.
York's show was so good.
Oh my gosh.
Tequila
That was
Tequila.
hmm
that was so, oh,
Oof.
Tequila. Wow,
The
y'all really bringing in some
mm,
early aughts gold right now.
yeah.
The
They were ahead of their
VH1 like
time.
the VH1 music documentaries, those were my favorite, like best
Yes.
of,
I
or
love the
like,
90s. I
Behind the
I
love the
love the
80s.
music.
90s.
I
Yeah.
love the
And it was
90s.
people
Best
just
sleep
like,
ever.
yeah, like I just love those documentary style, like just the same people like on, and then like top 20 countdown. Like I was obsessed with like all of VH1 and like um well MTV at the time.
Hold on. How old are you, Rivka?
I'm 25, so I'm
What the fuck? I'm like, wait a minute. She must be my age because like top 20 count on that like that. I was
Mhm.
raised on that.
well, I was raised on it too, but I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
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 All of our
Yeah.
intelligence comes from VH1 retrospective shows.
Yeah. So like
Mhm.
if you were a teenager watching it, you were having the teenager perspective of it.
Right.
I was probably like, yeah, I was a kid watching it. So, but I also
You're
like
5.
yeah, I was starting to listen to music like real early. So like that was kind of, it was like the way that it went on my brain. Like I also was, the amount of media I was consuming as a child to teen, like my whole life, I had been consuming. I had a TV, I had a little TV in my room. I watched so much television, like
Mm.
so much television. So like that's why the way I watch TV now is just reminiscent of like at how I consume media as a kid too.
Mhm.
But yeah.
No, that's exactly my thing. And TV was a like form of escapism, right? But then what I'm just so grateful for is just kind of the happenstance of finding SNL at the time, or VH1, or when MTV actually had substance, and like watching all the Real Worlds when they premiered, and
Right.
just kind of like not real knowing that this is something special, or like or it's at least widening my brain, or like expanding my brain, or what I knew of the world. And then also being a part of something that was like just culturally significant. And then also just getting in the gateway into just consuming all sorts of media. I mean, I have a hard stop at TLC shows, like that's my line. And VH1
What not to
now,
wear?
because
What not to wear?
what not to wear, Say Yes to the Dress, 90 Day
Mm.
Fiance. I think 90 Day Fiance is one of those shows that legitimizes toxic and abusive relationships. And then you have the Duggars, where it's like we can legitimize overpopulation if it's white and cultish and Christian. But if we depict a black family, then it's welfare moms, or it's out of control breeding. Like there's just like, it's TLC is too fucking dark for me.
Yeah.
And VH1 is where it was campy and fun in the early aughts.
Yes.
It's just it's exploitative now, where it's just, let's, how many tropes can we parse out in just 30 minutes, and it's like, this is a lot. So one piece of media that I'm excited about is, I mean, you'd have to ask me from which streaming platform, because I have them all. But I'm really
no, go ahead.
No, I'm really excited for season 3 of The Boys. Season 2 just and I'm pissed because it's coming out in June, so I'm like, no, I have to wait 6 months. But season 3, I just want to see how they're going to parse out how we ended season 2.
Right.
And season 2 was fucking phenomenal and wrecked me. And also, because it's fresh on my mind, Ozark is premiering in 2 weeks, and I want to see how they end. If it's not with everyone dying, then I don't want it.
Perfect. Rivka, Tobias?
I don't know what I'm looking forward to right now.
Yeah, you've been in a
right. That's such a hard.
I've been in a rut. That's why I watched The Witcher. As I was like, what the fuck should I watch? And then everyone was like, The Witcher, and I was like, okay.
And then
and
you
I
end up
loved
loving
it.
it.
Yeah. But I'm probably gonna be in like I'm interested in like I want to keep doing fantasy stuff, so I might watch Shadow and Bone and Wheel of Time.
Nice.
Yeah, Wheel of Time. Yeah, I think
Wheel of
be in like
Time.
gonna be in little fantasy land for a little bit. But actually, there's like a lot of I like follow like a queer cinema account. So I have been like saving all these like different like queer movies that look interesting. So I'm also excited to explore that. Kurt just got a movie account, so hopefully we will watch movies soon.
What? A movie account?
Like
MUBI.
It's like an independent foreign film like platform that has like a lot of really cool stuff. Like they have art house stuff and like indie, a lot of international stuff that you can't necessarily access anywhere else.
And it's like a very social app
too. Yeah.
So yeah, that's great.
That's awesome.
Tobias?
Wait, there was something I wanted to say to Rivka. Just don't binge watch anything, and you'll have a lot of stuff to watch. Just take your time. Because Rivka is notorious for just. Did you watch all of Witcher season 2 in one night?
No, I think it was season 1, right?
I watched both seasons in 3 days. So I I watched 6 episodes one day and then finished the second 2 and then 6 episodes of season 2 and then finished the second 2 in the morning. So it was like a 3-day thing.
And the last 2 were like the most. I told you they were going to be crazy.
They were crazy.
They were.
They were crazy. So.
But hey, Tobias, if you have all the streaming platforms, then you can binge and still have something to watch. That's my life.
That's so true. Also, like, if we're thinking economically, I'm just like, I'm paying so much for all these platforms. I got to get all my money's worth. Who knows if I got to.
I'm not having kids. People have kids, and I collect streaming platforms like Thanos' Infinity Stones. Like, that's where my money's going. That's the bill I'm going to pay.
My investments.
Exactly.
The stuff that I'm interested for, I still have to finish Succession. Really excited to finally put a book into that for right now.
And you're talking about season 3, correct?
Season 3,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I have been taking my time with it, even with it already all being out, just to like savor every fucking moment of this horrible family entrenching itself in its own bullshit. Oh my God.
If I'm going to come back, we're talking about Succession.
Oh, thank God, please. Please.
This is where you and Tobias get like y'all like the boys in Succession. This is where I'm kind of like I'll opt out. I'll
I don't know, man. With the way your brain works, I think you would find Succession.
I've been trying to tell them that.
I know.
Tell them like, please.
I wouldn't. The boys. I mean, you can just watch Falcon and Winter Soldier to get the gist of the boys, but Succession.
I know. I think I need to watch it with somebody or like have a purpose because I think that it's like I hate them all. I already know that I hate them all. So like I like just the very being of like what they are annoys me. So like I know that going into it, I'm kind of like because these are real people that exist that I like.
Oh yeah.
And so I know sociologically and politically and all the ways I could do a deep analysis of it, but I'm like, is that what I want to do right now?
Right.
When you're ready, I will
ready.
Watch it just for you.
Thank you.
I'll watch it for a dime. I don't care.
Okay. My friend Sharia, who I like love so dearly, is obsessed with this show, and she's like she talks about it in like she's always tweeting about it, and I'm like, okay, I guess like I have to at some point watch it because like I guess I can't go. Tobias, you've been trying to tell me to watch it. So you
Look,
want to finish Succession season 3, Tobias?
Yeah, I'm on episode 8, so I'm like, yeah. And let me tell you, I was already telling a friend, like, I think that, like, I already thought that from 6 on that, like, we were hitting high points, and then 8 just like hit me of like, whoa, oh my god. And
It
so
hit me in
just
my chest. I still have
hmm
bruising. And then 9 and 10 is going to emotionally gut you. Like I don't even know. I don't even know how to explain 9 and
yeah.
10.
Oh man.
Brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
I'm yeah, I just I love Jeremy Strong's performance in that whole show, that is like understated and also just so
So methodical.
yeah, yeah. I oh my god. That whole written piece on him, like, was great. And anyone that shit was not like shitting on him. That shit was looking at, like, how do you get a performance like that,
Yes.
like, consistently? And I'm like, this fits. How would you not want an actor like this to be so deep in their own bullshit?
And I think
Oh
that's when we get into the point of like when you just have like average consumers watching like highbrow piece of stuff where it just goes over their head, but then they want to like have a reaction to it. And it's like, oh God, you're an idiot. Sorry, that sounded really elitist of me, chat. I'm not an elitist. Oh my gosh, I love everyone.
Oh my gosh, there's a
Panicking.
wealth of
and
conversations that we can be having. Um,
yeah.
Yeah,
Sophie, thank you.
elitism.
Yeah, Sophie, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, and we're so excited
Thanks
about
for
having you
having
back.
me.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, just a quick announcement too, everybody. If you check this, of course, is going to go on to our Nerd Gaze YouTube account. There's a Nerd Gaze YouTube account. We also have an interview with Amanda Celine Miller that we did over at C2E2. That's live on that channel as well, so you can check that out. I'll go ahead and drop a link in the chat while we're in the goodbye screen. But yeah, if everyone just wants to say goodbye.
Bye. Thanks for having me. You all are so brilliant. And thank you for those who stuck around through all our technical difficulties and engaged in the chat. I couldn't see the chat, but I'm glad y'all were here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
me
send
too.
you over to another stream too, y'all. So thanks for sticking on by.
Pleasure. All right.